And welcome, and James Atkins from Vantage Strategy and Marketing, and I thank you for coming along today. I'd also like to thank Russell and Ray from Strategic Business Development who are hosting this series of webinars. There's a number of others that you can attend over time or go back and look at, and I encourage you to do that. Today we're going to focus on an area of marketing that there's a lot of noise around, in my opinion, content marketing. Last year, ADMAR and the Content Marketing Institute did a survey of businesses globally, and in Australia they found that over 95% of businesses were using content marketing as a strategy, but only 33%, only a third of them, found it effective, which is pretty poor, obviously. So what I'll try to do today is introduce two models or frameworks to help make it better, help you make content marketing a more effective part of your toolkit. And I've used these with clients from large to very small, so I believe you'll be able to hopefully find something during these 30 minutes that's of value to you. There's a workbook that I hope you've been able to download. If you haven't, I'll talk you through it because there's a couple of simple exercises we'll do during the session where we'll stop and give you a moment to write some extra notes. This presentation will be available online and also emailed to you. We're recording today as well, so you can go back and look at any bit that you missed or share it with your colleagues. And we'll have a couple of occasions during for you to post some questions and answers and also at the end. And I'm happy obviously to pick up anything with anyone offline. We will move through at a reasonable pace, so please spend some time and afterwards going over it and seeing what's practical for your business. Just a little bit about myself. I work with businesses and their leaders, helping them refine their strategy so they can grow, either in profit, sales or people. My sweet spot, so to speak, is medium to large organisations, typically where sales and marketing are an important part of making them grow. I think there are two key factors that are driving the focus and increasing popularity and value of content as a key marketing activity. And the first of these is around that it's really getting louder. It's getting louder and much more cluttered. Various estimates show that we're exposed to as people, as consumers and customers, over 3,000 commercial messages every day. This is from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed. The amount of messages are amazing. The new media is exploding, there's new approaches to delivery, and there's no reason to doubt why 65%, two-thirds of people feel continuously bombarded by advertising. But successful businesses have moved from the mindset of broadcasting, like this guy's doing, to one of engagement. And I think the other key factor is people realise that marketing is more than just broadcast, more than just noise. It's the sum of the customer experience, the various touch points. So in this context, we all need to think, how do we stand out? The second factor, other than the noise, relates to the power it is literally in the hands of the customer. With those extra channels and increased frequency, in fact, there is less clarity. And what we've seen is that the decision process has changed. That the traditional marketing funnel, through from awareness to loyalty and advocacy, has been inverted. McKinsey did a really interesting study on the consumer decision journey and said the internet, and particularly mobile, has made the consideration and the post-decision phases much more complex. People are researching and looking for information at various points in the decision journey, and this gives them the power. They're out there searching for answers to their problems, not waiting for you to broadcast messages. So we have increased the clutter and there's less useful information available. So what customers are looking for are answers. So they search, they ask, they attempt to validate what you're offering. Not from what you tell them in an ad or a brochure, but from what they can find out for themselves and from friends and trusted colleagues. And it's from their research in many times at the point of purchase, and I'm sure those on the call from the retail sector are keenly aware of showroom. So the nature of marketing communication in particular has changed. Advertising as a push technique around what you offer, hoping it answers questions. So instead of broadcasting information, the new core of marketing is about providing information, providing connections between customers even, and sources they trust to help them make informed decisions. that support that decision, albeit you are guiding them, and that's where content marketing comes in. How can you guide them? And this is the new core of marketing, that content that arms and empowers your customers. The mistake that many businesses make, though, is thinking it's another form of push marketing. Push marketing around broadcast things like advertising, direct mail, brochures and supply. In fact, what we really have now is push and pull. And the pull is the core of content marketing. This shift is something that Google have identified from their own research, as well as the change from researching to real-time insight, customers looking for information there and then, and from creative being the driver of marketing to content being the driver of marketing. So with pull, that's significantly important. It's not to say we're moving all to pull. It is the right balance between push and pull in your business. And that right balance comes down to, in many ways, around content. So that survey I mentioned earlier about ADMAR and the Content Marketing Institute, they talked about that nearly 70% were growing of Australian businesses were growing their budget and focus. They were over 80 producing more content than over a year ago. And in Australia, interestingly, we're above all the global numbers. But only a third think it's effective. And one of the reasons is there isn't a clear strategy. And the same survey said that only half of marketers actually have a documented strategy, which is pretty damning if you think about its importance and the value it could provide. So if you want any information about that study, you can Google it, ADMAR Content Marketing Institute, or drop me a note and I can point you to it. So the question I would ask you all is, where are you in the content marketing journey? This comes from a mob called Orbit Media. Obviously, early on, people have a presence, a website, and they hopefully have SEO basics and analytics. Then they come to start publishing. And interesting, if you're in the B2B market, HubSpot have found that those companies that blog, even just a small amount, once or twice a month, can generate 70% more leads than those that don't. So we're starting to see some hard data to support some of the theories. Then you can move to promote, and obviously email marketing is part of that, and have templates and systems to support you. Then you're hopefully ready to engage and utilising social media and starting that two-way engagement. And then over time, integrate into your systems. Now obviously you may be at different stages, the different parts of your mix, but it's interesting to think about where you are in the evolution. And this is where I'll point you to the first exercise in the workbook. There's just some bullet points there for you to just quickly jot down, where do you see yourself in the content marketing evolution? And also, where do you see that you may go over time? So I'll just give you a few seconds to have a think about that. And if you've got any questions while you're doing that, please pop them up into the question section. Okay. So you say, I need to generate more content, and there's a cartoon I found the other day that I really like, is I have nothing to say and therefore you should blog about it. And I don't know about you, and some of the blogs that I've seen, I think that some people don't have anything to say. And the result for all of us as customers and consumers is this. Our inbox feels the digital equivalent of being overloaded by paper. And as those of you involved with email marketing in particular will know that the click-through rates and engagement on traditional approaches have dropped significantly. It's easy to be deleted or blocked. So the currency around content is how can you curate, edit, tailor to real problems that is authentic? Because at the end of the day, what you're trying to build is trust. There's trust delivered, though, how your customer or your target audience wants. The first question, though, for you to think about, I think, is what are your, just with any activity, any marketing activity, what's your organisational goals around this? Is it brand? Is it engagement? Is it leads? Is it sales? Is it thought leadership? And where are you in the journey? Can help you start to think about your goals. So whilst we'll now go into some tactics to make it sharper and help you, I really encourage you as you go through this process to think about what are those goals and how you will use them. The first approach is to think about how to get people listening and conversing. And it's not necessarily an endpoint, it may be in incremental steps, depending where you are. Where are they in the customer journey is important. So quite often, if it's a new customer, it will be quite different to one that's a regular and advocate. And I think there's 4 broad types of content development strategies that you can use based on your goals to shape your content marketing. And the first of those is around validating who you are. And I'll go into these in a bit more detail in a second. Validating who you are and why you'd want to do business or buy products from you. The second is educate more broadly, and that's about providing education and value that actually helps those types of customers. The third is around sharing information from others, and then proving that point when you're really attempting to get a customer or a target to work with you or to buy from you. So what does validate mean? I think validate can be across a number of different areas depending on the type of business you are and, as I said, where they are in the journey. It's really that thing about who you are, what is your product, and trying to get your customer to get permission for them to listen to you rather than you to broadcast. It's about the building blocks of trust. Now, I see a lot of this that is quite often very worthy and boring. The credentials, what awards you've won, etc. And it's all about you. So I think you need to be in this area quite creative if you can. You need to be able to try and break some rules. Tell stories, for instance. Use other media such as video, use infographic, use ways to actually make the validation stage interesting and engaging. And I think you can really do it well. For example, there are ways that if LinkedIn is a key strategy for you, that you actually can have clip-ins in your site for people to see who they're also linked to through you, to actually start to build those connections. I know of a large professional services firm that got Validate really wrong, whereby their proposal that they sent and the information on their website about people who are going to do the business, so people that were going to do the business on the website, and their proposal didn't match with what was on LinkedIn. There was a disconnect, and they actually didn't get that tender because of it. So that validation stage, they failed. There was not any purpose of misleading. It just wasn't clear, it wasn't crisp, and it wasn't updated. So really thinking about how you do that and how you use not just information you give, but your connections and people you use through things like social media to help validate. The second is around educate. And this really is the broader context, moving away from just your product or your services, features and benefits. In fact, that shouldn't be the starting point, because a lot of that is self-serving wallpaper. And a great example of this from a year or two ago is Google's Zero Moment of Truth research about how the internet had changed how we buy. Now, you could argue self-serving, but pretty much, in my opinion, real thought leadership has had a real impact when applied in strategic thinking and how actually people go online and take their products and services. And interestingly, I've noticed they've extended their research into quite category-specific areas around zero moment of truth, credit cards, investments, etc. So they've actually been able to look at this and make a real thought leadership piece. Yes, it points back to them, hence I think quite smart, but it also is real education that has an impact. Deloitte's are fantastic in this way. If you haven't looked on Deloitte's website here in Australia and look at what they're doing around the lucky country, and in particular their thought leadership and the models they've developed around the digital revolution, that's a great example of education beyond their products and services, but steeped in who they are and what makes them well. And e-newsletters it can be, if properly linked and properly designed, really effective, and it's one of the top 4 tactics used in content marketing. Over 80% of Australian businesses are using it, along with blogs, articles and social media. So education beyond your products and services. The fourth is around sharing, and sharing information from your customers to create connections, partners that you have that may be in other expertise or adjacencies, republishing information that makes sense, but being a filter or an aggregate so that you can really add value. Amex in the States, they haven't done it here, have a thing called Open Forum, which is an advice sharing platform where entrepreneurs, not just their customers, can exchange advice to make smart decisions and succeed, how they position it. So I think that's really interesting for you to think about. How can you share in your community, in your network? And the fourth is around proving, going beyond the typical, using videos, using case studies, using diagnostics, using simple tools that can really prove who you are and prove the value you're providing in your content. And some obvious ones there around testimonials, but how can you do it more creatively? How can you do it in a way that is not just wallpaper, showing results, showing partnerships, and there's an opportunity there. So in my view, there's a journey here, how to get people listening, conversing, 4 key areas: validate, educate, share, improve, and then there may be some overlap depending on your business. But I'll just give you a few seconds to think through and just jot down in the workbook, what would validate be for you? What would educate be for you? Share, improve. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds just to jot anything down. And as I said, encourage you to do this later as well. And if there's any questions, please feel free to pop them up and I can talk while people are jotting down. Okay, one of the other things I think when you're thinking about these different 4 steps is to ensure that there's a sense of direction, because obviously you're wanting to move people along the decision journey towards purchasing. So having sets of steps, not just making it static. You know, if someone is engaged with a piece of validate, how do you introduce them to educate? If they're right into educate, how do you help them share? Those sorts of things. So, you know, obviously adding more, registering, clicking, all those sorts of things are really important. So I see these 4 as strategies to help you develop content to support your customers in making informed decisions. So when they search, there's content that's helping them in this decision process. But the question I found with people is, how do you know if it's of value? How is actually of value and is building your brand? How to ensure the customer is a key part of the process, not just about you broadcasting, but just in a different form. So this is where we come to what I call the sweet spot of marketing, a tool I've developed. And in my view, effective content marketing, based on those 4 steps, hits a sweet spot when it can go across these 3 areas. The firstly is what I call digestible. Digestible meaning getting it in a form where and when your target wants it. To truly know that you need to be able to understand their context, their pressures, how they like to be engaged. It obviously requires a deep understanding of customers. The second is around solving problems, real customer problems. And this is a different flip for a lot of marketing. It's always been important, but most marketing, or a lot of marketing, just doesn't deliver that. And I think to solve problems is the way of getting customer connection, either at an emotional or a functional level. We don't want to be overly functional here. And then thirdly is your competitive advantage, your expertise. What's unique about your offering? If there's nothing, well, I think there's probably another conversation we need to have, because that's clearly core. But a clear, distinctive competitive advantage, it should be at the heart of your marketing and obviously of your strategy overall. So what does digestible mean? A bit more context. It can be around their context. What's their context of their life? Is what you're providing understandable? So if they're showrooming, is it going to actually work on their mobile in store? Is it accessible? Can it be searched? So therefore search engine optimization is critical, but you're actually doing it in a way that's related to customer problems, the next one. Is it readable, scannable? I mean, direct marketing techniques, I think, have taught a lot around scanning, but quite often this isn't used in content marketing. And from a format perspective, is it shareable? Are you able to share it? And I think digestibility also comes down to ensuring you elicit an emotional response, because over 85% of all decisions have an element of emotional decision-making, rationality. Maybe backed up by logic, but it's key. So can you be visual, tactile, auditory in some form to get noticed and remembered. And I think that helps with it being digestible. Maybe it's a game. IBM have done some great stuff about gamification, or a detailed thought leadership piece, or even an infographic. Symphony 3, an Australian social media organisation, or online media organisation, have done a great job on their social media guide, an infographic which has just been really well distributed. Encourage you to Google Symphony 3 social media guide. A great example of something that's digestible by using some different formats. The second is, does it solve problems? And problems, and it obviously requires you to have a deep understanding of your target market's problems and their needs. And depending on the type of business you're in, thought leadership is important here, especially in B2B, but similarly in terms of problem solving. And stuff that's worthy, not worthy, but practical. Now, Deloitte, as I said, had that digital revolution paper. It's a 50-page paper. It mixed primary and secondary research analysis, used interesting global facts, but also then used their own experience around recruitment. I think they quoted that they've been able to reduce their costs of recruitment by 80% by using social media and networks. And those people that joined were better engaged and stayed longer. So they were actually able to show the results of the digital revolution in their professional services market. Colgate have a fantastic online oral and dental health resource centre. They've got videos, guides, heaps of articles, and they're very much around positioning, solving the problem of not just brushing my teeth, but having oral health, and obviously that's got product flow-on effects. Woolworths, similarly, in the baby and toddler club, very good at providing a community, but solving problems beyond the products they sell around the context of new families with babies and toddlers. So solving problems is key, and one that may need you to be more segmented in your content strategy if you have different groups of customers. And the third is around competitive advantage. As I said, hopefully you can all state and have clarity around this. But the next step then is, are you able to prove it? Is it clear? Is it relevant, concrete, and provable? And are you able to be objective, not just subjective about it? So, the validate section we talked about, awards, partner, external references, being an expert speaker, for instance, are all ways of validating your competitive and proving your competitive advantage. I came across a great consulting firm recently from BRW Fast 100 called Seven Consulting. They've been a fast-growing company. And they had a really clear competitive advantage around quality outcomes. Inference being, I think, that many because they're in the project management space, inference being that many project managers are people shops and not very outcome focused. And so they talked about being private and independent, and proved that by saying we have no formal or informal relationships or partnerships. They claim that they have a 100% delivery success record with their clients. So they say, we'll provide you with reference for every assignment we've done since we started back in 2002. They say they have strong repeat business, and they talk about their first clients. So it's not just about saying it, it's about proving it, or being able to provide ways that clients can validate and prove, as we talked about earlier. So those three there, in my view, if you hit all three, you're hitting the sweet spot. Now, sometimes your marketing may only focus on one or two at best, but if it's digestible, for instance, and relates to competitive advantage, that may well be all in good, but it is purely promotional, and it's not necessarily solving problems. If it solves problems and is digestible, that's great, but over time you'd have to question what role are you playing if it's not related to who you are and to the nature of the value your product or service brings. If it's the two of competitive advantage and solving problems, well, then you're just going to add 3,000 commercial messages each day. And there's a couple of great examples I've seen. Kiki K, the stationery and style shop, have I think got an inspiration blog where they've been really great at being able to create a community around food, recipes, styling, question and answers. It's very digestible. People can use it in a way they want. Solves problems around styling, both your business and your home, and is very much centred in who they are and why they're successful. In a business context, MYOB do great blog around news, views, and ideas, which is shot out to people. Interestingly, they go beyond their competitive advantage around accounting software by using a multi-author approach where they bring experts in for either for sales or marketing or leadership or HR. So they were able to bring competitive advantage around their understanding of small businesses. and one I came across recently because I was at a conference. A guy called Matt Bull from Red Bull Racing was speaking, and Red Bull Racing, the plane stunt racing, they probably want me to call it stunts, started as a sponsorship, and now it's an event in their own right, which is really impressive. In that, that's a great piece of content marketing. It's digestible in terms of people who are avid fans, and it solves a problem in terms of excitement and creates an emotional connection that's very much around speed and high adventure from a competitive advantage perspective. So I'd like you just to spend a minute or 30 seconds or so thinking through for you in the workbook, what is it that is digestible for your customers? What problems are you trying to solve? And how would you prove competitive advantage? So I'll just give you a moment. Similarly, any questions, please put them up. Okay, well, we've come to the end of the session. As I said, we've gone through really understanding the context of content marketing and looking at what strategic focus strategies you need to focus on in context of that, around validate, educate and share, and obviously around hitting your sweet spot. Someone put a question up about how do they work together. Well, I think it's a little bit iterative. I think you can first think through the validate, educate, share, proof piece, to sort of almost like I'd do it like a brainstorm. What are the different ways we can do it? And then apply the exercise around, let's think about firstly what solve the problems are. What are the solved problems? What are the different client problems they have? What's suggestible for them? And being really clear and competitive advantage, and then can start to filter. So it can be a little bit different. So that's how that's gone. Any other questions? Great. Okay. Thanks very much. And I encourage you, if you want to get some more information, please subscribe to our quarterly newsletters, where we send out things like this from a content perspective. If you want to discuss how you could use the sweet spot in your own business, or bounce off me a few questions, please either drop me an email or give me a call, and then we can go from there. So thanks very much, and good luck and good evening.